In the last 3 months, I've been having 4 meetings every single day with some of you guys. And these meetings have been with people from various fields in the industry, some of them with 0 years of experience and some with up to 25 years of experience as well. But the common problem over here, the common denominator amongst all of these applicants was that they are facing visa issues. Some of them were not able to get a job, and some of them have a job, but they're not able to get a green card. They've been waiting in line for years and years and years. Even after 15 years of waiting, there's nothing, like the progress is zero essentially. Others who are freshers may have gotten a job also, but they're not able to get the H-1B. Now, with this happening, is it okay to go to the US in, let's say, 2025? Should you choose US as your study abroad destination? See, I'll give you a very raw perspective. I want you to begin from this stage. Just take a look at this data. And this is very basic, information that we all probably know at this point, is that given these 2 years or 3 years, if you see how many students essentially went to the US, they've risen essentially in just 2 years' time. They've risen by 45%. Now, if you notice, essentially, the H-1B capacity since 2005 has been stuck at 85,000 per year. That means there's a lottery, and out of that lottery, essentially 85,000 people get it. The rest don't get it. So even if, let's say, only 10,000 students immigrate, essentially, it's still 85,000. Or if basically in our case right now, close to 1.5 lakh students essentially going to the US every year, it's still going to remain 85,000 only. So the problem over here is that the supply, which is basically of H-1Bs, is extremely low as compared to the demand. There's so many people asking for the H-1Bs right now, and there's way too many people essentially as opposed to the number of visas available. So from what I see at this point, one of two things has to happen. Number one is that either there's a change in the immigration law. They allow more people certainly to get the H-1B, which I personally feel, with the ongoing rhetoric of, make America great again and, have higher American and everything, I don't think that's going to happen. The number two option that we have at this point is that many students from now on, you'll start to see, is that after the OPT, they'll start going home. The reason is they did not get the H-1B. And this is assuming that they get a job. I'm going to talk about jobs in a minute. Before that, understand this. I'm not trying to demotivate you in this video. The students and employers will adjust to the requirements. But the thing is, students have to adjust more. And employers also have to adjust to the smarter visa types at this stage, which basically are going to essentially help them, sort of not cheat the system, but actually outsmart the system basically over here. And that visa type, for instance, would be O1 visa instead of the H-1B. So there is additional effort required, not only from the student side, because I know, Indians are very hardworking. I know that students will put in effort. They will basically involve in research also, and they'll start to basically build their profile in a way that they qualify for the O1 also. They prove that they're extraordinary and they'll get it also. But employers also have to be supportive. And given that employers still have that 85,000 quota, and usually that's enough for them, in most cases, that change is a bit difficult also. Now, at this point, it's very important to talk about jobs. I know that the job market is certainly looking out to be bad at this point. The thing is that the job market is not bad. The job market seems to be bad, and it's a sort of almost like a hoax that's been created in our minds. The reason is that there's been a 45% increase in students, and that's just from one country essentially. Now understand this, there's not been a 45% increase in jobs by any means. There may be potentially 10% increase, 15% increase, but 45%, that's a bit too much. The reason is we are no longer in 2021, 2022, where companies were being pumped with money through the VCs essentially. And there was, companies were hiring like crazy back then. People were getting so many offers. Even unqualified people were getting offers. So that unlimited supply of funding that these companies had, these tech giants had, it's now gone. So what I feel right now is that employers will start shifting on quality applications. That's what they've already started doing. If you see what's going on right now in the market, is that people who are not able to get jobs especially belong to these tier 3 universities, where basically, or they belong to vocational universities, but the location is completely tier 3. It's, in the middle of nowhere essentially. So what will matter over here is, number one, your experience. While it is not to say that if you are not experienced, you should not go for your master's. I've seen people get jobs even if they don't have any experience, and people with experience, I've seen them getting laid off also. So it is not to say that this is the only thing that will matter. The whole holistic approach to your profile does matter. But with that said, experience is going to be important if you know what you're doing, and if the employer is looking for exactly that is related to experience. The next thing, your qualification level will still matter. Especially in the H-1B and everything, as you already know, the quotas and everything, they're shifted towards people with higher qualifications. And finally, I don't like to say this, but I feel that your university quality will start to matter more, because if I am an employer, and I'm telling you this based on my experience, if I'm an employer and I have two resumes in front of me, one is from someone who has a UC Berkeley profile and one is from someone who is from SJSU, and both of these are on paper the same to me, I personally will call the UC Berkeley guy first for the interview. So what are the upcoming changes that might happen? Number one is that the US basically in itself, overall, basically studying there and then getting a job over there, I think overall this endeavor is going to get much more competitive. No longer are H-1Bs handed out on a silver platter like they used to be a decade, 2 decades ago in our parents' time. This is not the time that we are living in essentially anymore. And you will have to work for it. And yes, only the best candidates will be getting it. I don't know if a merit-based system will be there anytime soon in an H-1B. But if it is there, there's a good probability that essentially this thing becomes a little bit more like how IIT is right now in India. Essentially getting into it is extremely difficult. Hardly anyone can get into it. But with that said, I don't think it'll all anyway at any point get as competitive as the IITs, because there's just way too many people over here in India who have IIT as accessible as an option as compared to the US basically, which is not accessible to certain people because of the monetary aspect of it. But with that said, I certainly believe it will become much more competitive than it used to be. And I personally feel that parents will start being much more proud of their kids. Okay, my son is in IIT, my daughter is in IIT. I think in future, parents will say, yeah, my son is working in Netflix, he got a job in the US, and they'll be very proud of it. Or even in a small company, if your son is working over there, your daughter is working over there, the reason is essentially that this is going to get just that much difficult. Because there will be people, and I know that before this revolution essentially takes place, there will be people who will go there to tier 3 universities, because, this is how it's always been going on right now, for the longest time. So people will still continue flocking, and once they go to these tier 3 universities, they will realize that, okay, employers don't want them. They'll come back, they'll tell their juniors. And then the juniors will also start double checking whether, they should go to the US or not, especially for tier 3 universities. So that's how basically it's going to come down. I feel that this will, and this is my number 2 point, this will actually bring in a decline in the number of students going to the US. And the sole reason for this is the competition that's going to be increasing. And I personally also feel that especially for the tier 3 universities, I feel that banks will stop giving out loans as they do right now. Because banks know where to put their money to get the money and the return on investment on it. And hence, if they feel that the return is not there, essentially, right now, US is still the number 1 country to go to, for the highest return if you want, essentially. Within 1.5 years, most people are able to pay off their loans, essentially, as long as you get a good job, essentially, on your OPT period itself, most cases, you're going to be done with it. But with that said, when they see that, these students are not able to get jobs going out of the country and, going to the US and into these tier 3 universities, essentially, and they're just not seeing success, they're going to start sort of ranking these universities and only giving out loans to the top universities. Because at the end of the day, for the bank, it's all about the money. They don't want it to convert to an NPA, essentially. So the big question over here, should you actually consider going to the US for your master's? If you've been thinking so, I know that I've told you a lot of factors over here, but I have not exactly answered the question straight away. So my answer is going to revolve around your why. You have to focus on why you want to go to the US. And for most people, this why exists in a couple of ways. And they might call it opportunity, quality of life, career growth, salary, but all of these things, to me, essentially, they sound the same. And I think whenever they say anything like this, they're talking about essentially the money that they're going to be making. So it's about the more money aspect of it. And to me, it is true, actually. It is true because, many people look at the purchase power parity and they say that, okay, as per the PPP, and I've gotten this comment so many times under my video, as per the PPT, 100K equates to, 18, 20 lakhs essentially. And on that basis, basically, if you're making 20 lakhs in India, you lead the same life. I don't feel that it's the same quality of life. I'm sorry about that, but it's simply not. And I also feel that getting 20 lakhs for a fresher, especially outside, right out of college, essentially, right out of graduation, after their bachelor's or after their master's, getting 20 lakhs for a fresher, it's not easy. As compared to someone in the US, I think you are much easily still, even now with the job market essentially, and with the influx of so many students coming in, I feel still making 100K in the US is easier as compared to making 20 lakhs in India. And that's just a fact of it. Whether you agree with me or not on this, I may be wrong, but I personally feel that is the case. And understand this, especially if you're in a STEM field and you get a 3-year OPT, what happens is, if in 3 years you've made in the US 300K, let's remove the taxes for now. In India, you've made what? Even if you're lucky enough to get 20 lakhs per annum, which by the way is unlikely, but you've made 60 lakhs at that stage. Now, if you compare 60 lakhs to 300K At that stage, I'm pretty sure if you have to move back to India as well, let's say you did not get the H-1B also, even then, the amount of savings you will have out of those 300K will be much higher as compared to the savings you'll have out of 60 lakhs. So with 300K, you already, paid off your loan. You've basically taken care of many other requirements probably at this point. And now you're coming back home, and I'm sure that you would still have quite good amount of savings. And in most cases, you will not come back home after 3 years. You'll find out either about the day one CPT route, about the O1 visa route, and you'll find certain ways through which you can basically stay in the US, or you'll move to Canada, and you'll still be leading a better quality of life in terms of money essentially as compared to India as of today. I don't know about tomorrow, but this is what will happen today. In short, if you're doing it for the money, and there's nothing wrong with that, people have been, doubling, tripling, or quadrupling their net worth essentially by going to the US, and that's completely okay. You should do it, absolutely, if you have the ability for it. But my only advice to you would be choose a good university with a good location. Don't fall into the trap of these, small-time counselors who are making money from these tier 3 universities, and they don't charge you anything. The reason is that someone is paying them, right? And the someone is going to be the university. Tier 3 university that pays them, they're ruining your future at the end of the day. And with that said, if you're not going for the money, and let's say number 2, you're going for international exposure. To me, what that screams to me is that you have a lot of money already. You don't worry about money essentially. And in most cases, you don't even need a loan. Your parents will pay for it. There's more than enough money. But you're doing it for the experience of it. And I would say absolutely hands-on, go for it if you fall into this scenario as well. But if you don't fall into any of these 2 scenarios, I personally feel that it may not be worth it for you to actually go to the US. And trust me, I have a counseling agency. I would love to onboard you and send you to the US if you come to me. But at the end of the day, if you don't fall into one of these 2 buckets, I'm telling you very, very honestly, don't come to me, because I feel that you might not be the right fit in that case. Because jobs and green cards are simply not being handed out as they used to be about 2 decades ago. It's all a matter of need. When the US needed more workers, they had way too less labor, they imported people. And I think the same is happening with Canada right now. Now they're tightening the rules because they feel that they have enough people now. And hence we need to adapt to that future. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you all the best. Subscribe to the channel and follow me on Instagram. There's a lot more where this came from. And let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I really want to know what you think about all of this and, the whole job market situation and the international students. And of course, still going to the US. I'd love to know your perspective and maybe make more videos on this in the future if I get a good response. Until then, goodbye and take care.